Hello and welcome to the Bridging Borders Project. I'm your host, Hannah Hundle, and I'm joined by my co-host, Sairaj Gopal, and we're excited to bring you another installment in our series with world leaders on global COVID-19 management. Today, we're honored to bring you Prime Minister Silveria Jacobs of Sint Maarten.
During the early stages of the pandemic, Prime Minister Jacobs gained international recognition for her strict call for social distancing. In her now famous words, simply stop moving. If you do not have the type of bread you like in your house, eat crackers.
Stop moving. Simply stop moving. If you do not have the type of bread you like in your house, eat crackers. If you do not have bread, eat cereal. Eat oats. And at the beginning of this, I said, prepare your disaster kit as if you would for a hurricane. That meant some people went out and buy toilet paper and water. The water's not going to stop. The toilet paper is still in the stores. What you need is food. You need to ensure that you have food, because if I have to take everybody who is saying that, at least 50%, shut it down completely, regardless. Food will also not be possible for 2 weeks for you to buy, because the workers in the food market will also have to stay home. Keep that in mind. But do not run to the supermarket today to buy for a month. As I said, buy for 1 to 2 weeks.
We're going to chat with Prime Minister Jacobs about how these quarantine measures panned out in her island, the Caribbean. And we'll find out if she has any words of wisdom for other leaders trying to get their transmission rates under control. Please welcome Prime Minister Jacobs.
Prime Minister Jacobs, your stay-home video went viral in the United States for its consistent leadership and strong message. Can you tell us what prompted you to make this video? And also, what is the coronavirus situation like today in Sint Maarten?
Okay, firstly, thank you for giving me this opportunity. I was very flabbergasted by the fact that video went viral, especially since it came out, as you asked, from a sense of frustration by the lack of time at the beginning of our COVID journey, I would want to call it. We had just started to send out those messages of what you need to do to stay safe, and it did not really resonate. People did not feel threatened. They really saw that it was something that was out of our country and not our problem. Oops, just went. However, we are a country that is very much dependent on travel for our sustenance. Our economy is a one-pillar economy. And to continue to allow people to come in was to continue to import COVID cases with our limited IC capacity. We only had 2 to 3 IC beds at a time. We mostly ship out critical patients to larger countries for medical attention. There's a serious problem. So for us, if there's no flights, then you can't do it. And so for me, it was an urgency for our people to be safe, for us to be able to contain the virus as quickly as possible, as we're a small country and with limited resources. And I must say that it worked. So today, some 2 months later, we have actually peaked and come all the way down. We have one positive case that has been lingering for a while because of underlying morbidities where oncology is concerned. So it's not that COVID is the problem at the moment, but he was already in a terminal state based on his prior morbidities. So we pray for his recovery. We still have hope and faith. However, the other diseases that he has been grappling with are having a much negative effect on him. As such, we are slowly de-escalating our measures and looking out to being able to reopen our economy.
Okay, so speaking a little bit about those measures, you actually instituted a near total lockdown of your side of the island. So Sint Maarten has both the Dutch side as well as the French side of the island. I'm interested, how are you working with the French side to institute these controls? When are you planning to come out of the full lockdown? And what are the epidemiological metrics that you're looking at to come out of this full lockdown?
Well, actually, we've already stopped our controls, some 3 weeks already. Our French counterparts did not agree, so they continued for another week or so. But really and truly, the cases were down to practically one or two on each side, properly contained. The social distancing that we have been preaching and practicing now is well ingrained in our population's mind. Everyone is now wearing masks. We've reopened restaurants. We've reopened stores. During we were shut down for like a week completely. And then we reopened supermarkets and other essential services slowly and for 3 days of the week. And then we slowly moved up to 5 days of the week. And now we're open every day again. And we still have a curfew at night from 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. As we haven't allowed for like the type of nightlife that would be open late at night as yet. So that we're in the last part of that phase 3. And the next phase is after June 15th, if all stays well. We're allowing persons to come home. We're repatriating our students mainly that leave for studies and other residents who are out there who want to come home. They do have to quarantine within a location of our designation for at least 2 weeks. And we're moving towards a specified date when we can say we're open for business for visitors as well as the rest of the population that would not need to quarantine. But to do that, epidemiologically, we want to ensure that we can test persons at a high rate. We have just received over the past 2 weeks some serology tests, which we have determined we want to check out some persons who we may have suspected were positive, but were not showing PCR positive. So these tests would then be able to see whether they have antibodies or not. And since it's still such a new virus, we can't say that they're then immune, but it still gives us a better idea of what number of the population actually, built up some type of antibodies towards this virus. So we cannot keep our economy closed. We actually went to a complete standstill. Our income dropped to at least a quarter for government, and we still have to sustain some businesses who have had to shut down due to the whole COVID reality and have still not reopened, some of them within the tourism industry. So we're gearing up. We're moving forward. We have a task force consisting of health, economic development, justice, and myself as general affairs. The state of emergency is almost over, and all ministers are now completely responsible for their portfolios, but we still collaborate as much as possible, especially in dealing with the recovery of COVID-19.
So in terms of coronavirus management, it seems that Sint Maarten has largely avoided the worst of the pandemic in terms of number of cases. However, the percentage of deaths has been high, Prime Minister. Have you gotten to the root yet of why that percentage of deaths is high? And also you mentioned testing procedures. So do you plan on implementing contact tracing as well?
We did do contact tracing from the very, very beginning. So for instance, when the first two persons just passed through our airport to get to the friend side, we tested everyone and not tested everyone, only those with symptoms and had traveled. We had a very strict protocol in the beginning. We had very limited tests. And so we did contact tracing, and anyone who had come in contact with that couple were put on quarantine for 2 weeks. None of those persons showed up positive or even developed symptoms, so that was great. And then slowly but surely, our students and returning residents, once we had shut down for visitors, started to develop symptoms, etc. And contact tracing was done for each and every person that we identified. The first couple of deaths that occurred, and may they rest in peace, were mainly persons from, let's say, our immigrant population that are living in very tight-knit communities whereby they don't even speak necessarily the language, and we have several languages. So we ramped up our information to the public in Spanish as well as Creole, and we did not see it escalated up to 15 deaths, of which 3 of them were not necessarily COVID-related, but persons with underlying morbidities. So I don't know if you know what I mean by that, but it is obesity, high blood pressure, diabetes especially, and even a couple of them that had cancer, some form of cancer, whereby their immune systems were already compromised. So we then sent out a lot of messages, a lot of public announcements that they stay at home, protect themselves, any jobs or businesses that had to remain open, persons with underlying health issues were the ones that were not allowed to work, and thereby hopefully protecting them. We did not lose anyone due to COVID in any of our senior homes or in hospital as such that were, like, say, infected by any kind of medical personnel or persons coming into them. So we were able to, with the lockdown, protect those very vulnerable. But I believe those first deaths really were as a relation to lack of information, not coming forward in time to be tested or to be treated. And after persons started, we did a lot of community outreach as well. So there's a hotline number to call. Doctors had numbers that they could call. But then after that, we went out with a group of persons with multilingual capacities to really reach out with flyers, pamphlets, information, and thereby over 4 weeks, we only found about 2 people total that actually turned up to be positive. So at that point, we realized we nipped it in the bud and we just waited for our active cases to diminish, and we're down to 1.
Now that your active cases have diminished, we're curious, how do you plan to provide economic relief to the citizens who have lost their jobs, especially because Sint Maarten is a country very dependent on tourism? Do you have a plan to reopen the country to visitors? Are you planning to do testing as soon as visitors come in? And what is your overall economic recovery scheme?
Actually, we're having that actual meeting this afternoon as to exactly how that protocol will be. We had an emergency operations center, which we normally have for hurricanes, but it's a disaster management team, of which I, at the time, chair those meetings. So the regular government operation pertaining to the COVID reality and the disaster was stagnated, and everything had to go through me and this group of advisors, let's call them that, professionals within their fields. And out of that larger group, we created a task force that came up with the guidelines, etc. So included the inspectorates of the various ministries of health and economic affairs, etc., and law enforcement, to be able to ensure that we could keep the people safe. So that same group, we're meeting as the relevant ministers, so together with my colleagues and them, to come up or agree or get advice from them as to the best way forward to be able to continue to protect our population, but still welcome visitors. So the Minister of Health has some very strong ideas pertaining to rapid testing. So he's looking at that to be able to, during the whole immigration process, have our visitors go through the rapid testing, and then thereby we are able to know. We have several other ideas. We've even bandied about having an app to be able to track visitors, different things. And we know technology is usually the best way to go. And people want to come to St. Maarten for rest, recreation, to be blessed, because that's the type of island we are. We welcome with open arms basically every nationality. We have over 100 nationalities living here on 37 square miles. And so that's how we promote ourselves, and people love it here. So they don't want to come here to be locked in a hotel room for 2 weeks. So we do have to have certain things in place so that we can assure that they, as well as all our workers, our citizens and residents, are safe. And that will be decided by the end of this week, because this phase goes until June 15th, which is Monday. And so we must have a clear-cut decision on how we're moving forward as we go through phase 4, which is then the last week, the 14th to the 21st. We're really looking at having some sense of normalcy by July 1st, but we still have to ensure that we can maintain safety. So today we'll be getting that final professional advice, and then as a government, we have to take that decision.
Incredible. Now, you've mentioned Sint Maarten is a multi-ethnic country with many nationalities present on the island. Now, we're seeing a lot of multi-ethnic strife here in the United States with the anti-racism protests. Sint Maarten has a history of colonialism and slavery. As a Black female prime minister, can you give our viewers some advice about navigating racial tensions within the context of a global pandemic so we can help the viewers out here in the United States?
Wow, this is really such a poignant moment to be alive in a time like this, to be actually experiencing this. We've only seen these type of riots or protests on TV during the Martin Luther King era, etc. And to hear sometimes some of the history, and I think an uneducated people can live for a long time under the thumb of another. And so that's why I've come up basically by my own bootstraps. I've come from a very poor, humble beginnings. education was the key. And I think education remains the key to being the type of change, and Mandela said it very well, it is the most powerful weapon with which to change the world. And though we are tiny, we have people educated all over the world. We have St. Martiners literally in the diaspora who are excelling. So for me, it is a key goal to get the highlight of those people, to encourage and inspire our people to stand up. We are a part of a Dutch kingdom, but even though we don't have a physical knee on our necks, we have the proverbial noose around our necks. We have constantly being bullied, let's say, by our former colonial powers. And at this stage, we have already 10 years of some type of sovereignty. Yet in those 10 years, they have succeeded, especially during these type of crises, to further take away some more autonomy from us. And that is where we differ from our French counterparts, whereby they are directly a department of France. So whatever is decided in France happens on the French side, but that's not how it happens here. We have our own parliament, we have our own government, but we are part of a kingdom government where we have very little say. So sometimes it still appears and feels like the chokehold. It still feels like a knee on our neck when we, like every other country in the world, we are facing economic strife, and those that are mandated by our laws to help us, and it is a loan, is putting conditions on that loan that have nothing to do with the repayment period, nothing to do with the interest rate or anything like that, is actually meddling in our day-to-day handling of our affairs, reforms that we are already working on, etc. So what we are doing is we are informing. First of all, I think governments of the past that continue to crash and fall was because of a lack of information to the people of St. Maarten. We are a small, tight-knit group. We love our Dutch passports, but we do not love Dutch manipulation or Dutch and or French coercion. And that's what it feels like right now. Not a physical knee in the neck, but a virtual one, constantly. Take it or leave it was the last, request or statement by our kingdom partners in granting a loan to not just St. Maarten, but Aruba and Curacao. All three islands financially in problems, and instead of helping, doing or taking measures that can actually hurt our autonomy, hurt our development, hurt the way we can progress as a people. So my message to my people is one of hope, one of faith, and one of hard work. And that if we, as a man thinketh, James Allen is my new favorite person, and he has been strengthening my mind, and I have been doing my best to inspire my people, and I've seen that have gone viral. So I think I'm doing something right. Yeah. And I see St. Maarten as a country that will be, sooner than we know, a strong multi-pillar economy, no longer just dependent on tourism. We are promoting entrepreneurship, e-commerce, and education as a way during this slow period for persons to use it to bring themselves up. More people now are looking at agriculture, looking at ways. We have a saying here, to turn your hand. It's an expression meaning making something to sell. And this now, with internet, with e-commerce, I believe we're not limited to just selling on island, whereby we had little to export except our own smart people, our own brains. We educate them, send them out, and they benefit the rest of the world. Now we can export our art, we can export our culture, we can export everything made in St. Maarten. And because St. Maarten is so special, I believe people will buy it and they will come and visit, and therefore will be a multi-pillar economy that has better resistance to these types of shocks, and thereby we'll be able to tell our oppressors, step on over.
Thank you so much, Prime Minister Jacobs, for the time you took to join us on the program today and speak about these really important issues. We're really grateful for your time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prime Minister Jacobs. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.